Hi everyone, I'm Dan Harding, Editor-in-Chief of Power Motor Yacht. I'm lucky because I recently had the opportunity to test Formula's new 457cc. Unbelievable boat after it debuted in the Miami show. I was really impressed with the engineering, but what I was told was to get the full story, I really should check out the facility. So, take them up on the offer, and today I find myself in Decatur, Indiana, and I'm really so glad I did. You always get a great behind-the-scenes look at how a boat comes together. You get the attention to detail. I think what impressed me most was the people I met along the floor. I met all sorts of family combinations. There were fathers and sons, brothers, sisters, cousins, mothers and daughters, all working shoulder by shoulder. And I also got to spend time with the Porter family, which is really generous with their time. They currently are in their fourth generation of owning and running this company, and you can really see how their family values make their way into the workforce. The last thing that impressed me was that how these sexy Miami-ready boats are built right in the American heartland, so far away from a major body of water. I think that really comes from the company's dedication to listening to their customers and fishing their boats really hard, spending a lot of time out on the water product testing. So with that, I hope you enjoy the audio version of my story that ran in the August-September issue of Power Motor Yacht. It was called The Family Factor. A behind-the-scenes tour of Formula's Decatur, Indiana facility reveals the real magic behind the builder's new 457. 1,800 horses are spurred out of the barn as the 457 CCS banks hard to starboard. Dire Straits' 1985 hit Money for Nothing blares from the JL audio system, and it's, count 'em, 21 speakers, 3 12-inch subwoofers, and 5 amplifiers. Music cranking, engines screaming, the boat's metallic gray paint glistening under the South Florida sun as we approach 50 knots. It is as Miami a moment as you could ever experience. This is the same stretch of offshore water where Formula founder Don Arano tested the original model, the 233, 62 years prior. Built in Miami, the original model boasted a deep V hull and the performance to propel it to numerous wins on the national racing stage. South Florida and Formula boats would be intrinsically linked in the more than half century to follow. But that's not where the boats are built. Not anymore. Today they're born 1,281 miles northeast of where I cut those hard Florida turns. Decatur, Indiana, population 9,900. When arriving in Decatur, you'll pass a Tractor Supply, Kroger, a Pancake House, and Rich's Restaurant, with its large roadside sign boasting a $79 dinner of chicken fried steak and tots. You'll drive past a lightly trafficked suburb and a cemetery. Who doesn't love quiet neighbors? Before arriving at a modern 575,000 square foot factory that seems to sprout from the ground like the corn in the field surrounding it. Every year, 250 boats roll out of the factory and down that unassuming street in Middle America. My guide through the modern boat building plant was product design coordinator Robert Gerhardt, and what made him perfect for the task at hand was not his intimate knowledge of each boat's design, which is thoughtful, or the build process, which is robust and confidence-inspiring, but the fact that he was born and raised in Decatur. Moving from department to department, he knew every single person. He knew who was newer to the job and who was nearing retirement after a 35-year career. He knew that the husband of the woman in laminations worked for Formula for a spell, and that the guy that just rode by with materials on his bicycle is a second-generation Formula employee. He pointed out a mother-daughter duo working side by side in upholstery, and 2 brothers working together in silent lockstep to raise a deck house. Yeah, there are a lot of siblings that work here, Ron explained. Minutes later, he stopped to chat with another employee about this week's upcoming MLB matchups. "Oh, this is my brother, by the way," Ron said with a smile. Formula truly is a family business. We think having family work together is a positive. Plus, how could we deter it when me and my siblings, and now the third generation of our family, all work here, said Formula's president Scott Porter, who works alongside his siblings Grant, Ted, Gene, and Wayne. "I think that Dad always said you're kind of tougher on your own family members than you are your closest friends. So we get a really good effort in family values." Dad, in this case, refers to the patriarch of the Formula family, the late Vic Porter. And while it was Arano who launched the brand, Vic was its longtime steward, especially after becoming the company's sole owner in 1979. The shadow of Vic Porter looms large throughout Decatur, but it's especially present within the walls of the factory. During my tour, I walked past a workstation where an employee neatly pinned up 2 photos. One was a nice shot of him and his wife on vacation,
And besides that was Vic Porter's obituary. I stopped to take in the symbolism. I've never met anyone who felt such a connection with their boss that they felt moved to hang their picture in their workstation. For Vic, and later the next two generations of his family, working in the boat business wasn't preordained. It was a result of an entrepreneurial spirit and happenstance. Born in 1931 and raised in tiny Decatur, Porter was a serial entrepreneur long before that word was ever invented. He worked as a volunteer firefighter, he sold real estate, he sold mobile homes, and then he owned an ice cream store and ice cream truck. Now, incredibly, I saw said ice cream truck completely restored to its original vintage, sitting right next to a brand new center console tucked inside the factory. Apparently, it was restored as a gift some years earlier. A short stint selling boats, however, is what led Porter to believe that he could build a better mousetrap. He began building small day boats with 3 employees in a converted ice cream locker. Humble and probably cold beginnings for a man who would grow formula into an internationally renowned builder. It's his working man roots that play a big role in how he became so revered amongst his employees. The second factor was the personal care he showed everyone who came to work for him. My grandfather spent a lot of time here before his passing, said Vic's grandson and third-generation formula staffer Josh Porter. I don't think he ever really retired. He'd come in on most days, up until close to his death, and walk the factory floor, and continue talking to employees, and just making sure they knew they were valued, and to make sure that they understood what they do matters. I think he left a great legacy as someone who was known as not just a great leader within the company, but as someone who was a servant leader. He often gets brought up in meetings. Someone will raise their hand and say, well, this is a question that Vic would usually ask, but I'll ask it. So his legacy lives on. His presence is still felt. When I asked if he felt any pressure growing up to join the family business, Josh explains that while the door to work for Formula was certainly always open, he never got pushed through it. For a time, he actually pursued a career in aeronautical engineering, even earning a degree in the field from Purdue. But eventually, he missed the soul and the charm of Formula, and he found his way home where he's now applying his engineering knowledge, making their new hulls fly. In many ways, Josh's return to company would seem like destiny. He has countless happy memories from inside the walls of Formula. I recall coming in here when I was in Boy Scouts and building Pinewood Derby cars. That would always happen right here, he said. This was our workshop. My earliest memories of being at that factory go back even further. They'd be from elementary school when we had Grandparents' Day, and they would come and visit and take you out to lunch. I remember once I had Grandma and Grandpa take me to the factory for lunch. That was a big deal for me back then. When the prodigal son came back to work for Formula, he began starting out on the cutting room floor. I spent the first 2 months on the factory floor, said Josh. I did a rotation through the entire factory just seeing how everything worked. And then I got to spend a lot of my time with our prototyping team, and they were working on the new boat that we were building at the time. And then I finally came to work in the office and started doing some engineering work. During his rotations through the many departments, he said engine installation was probably his favorite. The engineer in him liked lending a hand and seeing how the boat systems connect to the outboards or stern drives. Before long, he found himself again manipulating CAD drawings and helping out to lay the framework for the builder's largest project to date, the 500 SSC. On boats like the 457 that I tested, he had a hand in the manipulation of the angles, depth, and position of the hull and its steps to ensure they constantly are evolving while maintaining their raceboat DNA. Despite the newfound perspective I gained from traveling 1,000 miles inland, I still couldn't shake the question of how a builder so far from the ocean could be so in tune with how boats are used today. For example, on the 457, they've incorporated innovative doors on both sides of the console aligned with the helm. At the push of a button, they open to deflect the wind flow that typically buffets anyone seated beside the helm. It's a feature that changes the entire experience. The reason for such thoughtful design and elements is extensive testing by the company's sport fishing team, one of the more enviable jobs of Formula. Where many boat builders are reticent to get their new boats dirty or banged up, an opposite approach is embraced by the Formula sport fishing team, which competes in countless multi-day tournaments in all sorts of sea conditions. These long stretches living aboard, cooking aboard, spilling and then cleaning blood from the decks is how, according to the company, they're able to bring back notebooks filled with design tweaks to make their boats stand out. Among these born at sea features on the 457 is storage for a sea bob that comes with a matching paint scheme that matches the boat. They have a clever aft grill with a fold-out cutting board and fold-in utensil storage, dual transom doors with fold-out steps in the gunnel for easy boarding from the bulkhead, and a massive power-out cooler in the cockpit that holds 180 Yes, 180 cans. There's also a power-up windshield, 24 phone chargers, 36 cup holders, and a partridge in a pear tree. In short, this thing is fully loaded with features today's boaters would appreciate, all put together by a passionate and hardworking congregation from the Midwest. Prior to my stay in Decatur, I thought of Formula as a family boat. I think of a slipmate that I had last summer who spent weekends aboard with his family, and countless other families I watched parade through new models at boat shows. But after my visit, I still associate Formula with family, only now that includes the 500 employees who consider themselves to be part of the family business. I rolled out of Decatur with a newfound respect for not just how formulas are built, but for the culture that's been created and cultivated by the men and women building each boat. So that's it. What I look forward to most is that I can now take that behind the scenes perspective and hopefully get to test countless more formulas in the years to come. But I know for certain I will never get on a formula again and not think back to the men and women I met at the factory that made me feel at home and left such a lasting impression. If by chance you are in the market for a new boat and you're considering a formula, God, do me a favor, make the trip. There's, Fort Wayne, when you go into, it's a small airport, but you can get there from anywhere. And I got to say, once you go through, you'll really appreciate what makes Formula special. So when you get there, go ahead and tell them Dan and Power Motor Yacht sent you. To subscribe to Power Motor Yacht, you can head on over to pmymag.com/subscribe for more of these behind-the-scenes tours and hopefully engaging stories. So until next time, thanks for listening. I'll see you out on the water.